Okay, my darlings, we are talking about Tiresias today. This is our little mini lesson for Book 11 of the Odyssey. And Tiresias is not only one of the most fascinating characters in Greek mythology, he's also very much a study in opposites. So we're going to start at the very beginning, which I've heard is a very good place to start, with his birth. Tiresias was the son of Chariclo, who was a water nymph and happens to be a favorite of Athena. And I only tell you that not only because it's fascinating, but this is going to play into our story later on. Tiresias has 3 favorite themes that he likes to work with. Here we have them listed. He likes to talk about blindness versus sight, darkness versus light, knowledge versus ignorance. And all of these themes, whenever he is talking to other characters, he kind of speaks metaphorically many times. Sometimes he just straight out says, "You're an ignorant wretch, you poor thing." But he always, whenever he's speaking, in whatever form he comes up in, whether it's a play or a story or a myth, these are the themes that he works with a lot of times whenever he speaks. Now we have 2 pieces of very famous literature that he shows up in. The first is Oedipus Rex, and this is considered to be the perfect play, according to Aristotle's book, The Poetics. And, just for you Freudian psychologist type people, this play is where we get the phrase Oedipus complex. If you are not familiar with this phrase and you would like to be thoroughly grossed out, please go read the play. But in Oedipus Rex, Oedipus is looking for the truth about what happened to the king before him. He was murdered. Nobody knows how it happened. All he knows is that it was murder. And Tiresias, because he is a blind prophet, he tells the king, "Well, I see that you have knowledge, but you keep your lips tight shut." Now, Oedipus does not know that he has knowledge or has not connected the knowledge, but Tiresias is telling him straight out. And then, when the king taunts Tiresias about his being blind, Tiresias turns around with, "Well, you, with your precious eyes, are blind to the corruption in your life." Some good examples of those themes that we talked about. In our book, in the Odyssey, you guys are going to be reading in Book 11 about how Odysseus goes into the underworld to speak with Tiresias because he knows. And here, Tiresias tells Odysseus, "You keep your eyes only on your home, blinded. You do not see that it is the journey itself which makes up your life." And we know that this whole story is about Odysseus realizing that it's not all about him. And once again, we have Tiresias using those opposites and those themes to talk to Odysseus. Now, we know that Tiresias is a blind prophet, but he was not always blind, nor was he always a prophet. During the American Revolution, just before he was about to lose his life, Nathan Hale, a patriot, says, "I regret that I have but one life to give." And I bring that up because Tiresias, one of the reasons that I find Tiresias so completely fascinating is that he had more than one life. And not only did he have more than one life, but he had a crazy amount of longevity in his lifetime, in each lifetime. In fact, there are ranges that go from 7 generations all the way up to 9 generations. So it's completely plausible that in these 3 lives that he lived, 300 years for each life. And this is due to the fact that his mother was a nymph. But before he became this famous blind prophet, the story goes that Tiresias is walking through the woods and he sees this pair of snakes coupling. For those of you who do not know what coupling means, that means they were getting jiggy with it, people. And instead of moving on, he stands there and observes them, because that's Tiresias. He is an observer of life. And maybe they started getting a little too close for his comfort, and he strikes them and ends up wounding them. Well, this is bad for Tiresias for a number of reasons. Number one being that snakes are considered to be sacred animals to the Greek gods. They are considered to be very wise creatures, and that is why they were, or one of the reasons why, they were considered a sacred animal. So this makes the gods unhappy, and so they punish Tiresias. And Tiresias is condemned to live a second life as a woman. Now, instead of raising his fist to the gods and saying, "Curse you, you immortal gods, dadgummit, I'm not even going to be able to vote until 1920. I won't live that long, and besides all that, I've got to honor my husband, I've got to do his bidding, I've got all these chores I'm going to have to do, I can't own property, and I am the closest thing to a slave that I can be without actually being a slave." He doesn't do that. Instead, Tiresias, because he is such an observer of life, decides, alrighty then, you've given me a chance to experience something new. How amazing is this going to be for me? So he goes through the second life as a woman, and he looks all around, and he takes everything in, and he experiences life to the fullest that he can as a female. Sometime throughout this female life, he gets this idea in his head, hey, I wonder if I go back to that same place and see those same pair of snakes, I wonder if I can get this curse reversed. So Tiresias goes on this nature walk as his female self. He does see the same pair of snakes coupling, and indeed the curse is lifted. Now we've got a couple of questions here for you. There's a lot of debate, because Tiresias is indeed granted a third life. But the question is, was he granted this third life back as a man because he went back to where he saw the snakes, and instead of striking them again, he just kept walking? Or is it because he did not curse the gods and instead experienced everything he could as a female? Questions to ponder. You see how much I love you? Now let's talk about Tiresias and his sight. Again, we've got a couple of stories about how Tiresias lost his sight. And again, both could theoretically be true. One may have happened in his first life and one in his third life. Or one of them could be true, or neither of them. There may be another story out there. Who knows? But these are the two we're going to look at today. So the first story that I want to bring to you is where Tiresias, again walking along, observing everything he sees, and unfortunately in this particular nature walk, he sees Athena bathing. Well, Athena is a virgin goddess, so she doesn't like the fact that this mortal has seen her in her all together, and so she takes away his sight. And we've talked about last quarter about how once a gift is given to a mortal, it cannot be taken away. The same is true of curses. You have to live with the curse. And in this instance, Athena blinds Tiresias. Well, Chariclo, remember this is Tiresias' mother, goes to her and begs for her son, begs mercy for her son. But Athena cannot take away this curse that she has already placed on Tiresias. But because Chariclo is one of her favorites, she says, okay, I'll tell you what, I'll give him sight. It's just not going to be physical sight. It's going to be prophetical sight. So here you go, Tiresias. You're blind, and yet you can see. Ta-da! The second story that we have has to do with Zeus and Hera getting into an argument. There's a surprise. So here we have Zeus and Hera arguing. Now here's the funny thing. Zeus and Hera are arguing over who they think gets the most enjoyment out of sex. Hera believes it's the men who get the most enjoyment, and Zeus says, no, honey, it's the women who get the most enjoyment. So they decide to call up Tiresias, since he is the only one, the only human who has lived both as a male and a female. So he seems the natural choice to solve the debate. Unfortunately for Tiresias, he sides with Zeus, and he says, no, I can tell you firsthand, women have the most enjoyment out of sex. Hera doesn't like this answer because it goes against her point of view, so she blinds him. Zeus, shaking his head at his wife, and as a thank you to Tiresias for siding with him, gives Tiresias the gift of prophecy as his gift. There's your information about Tiresias. Now you know the rest of the story, so go read chapter 11 and enjoy your knowledge of Tiresias.